Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Joy. I'm a 3-time Paralympian and I've just recently competed at the Paris Paralympic Games in wheelchair basketball. I'm also a PhD student at the University of Alabama and I am currently living in the United States.
Oh, amazing. So how is it going in Alabama and what are you studying for your PhD?
So I'm studying health education and promotion. I'm in my second year and I've just got back from Paris, so probably about 2.5 weeks now. So just settling in, haven't touched my basketball chair yet. So just slowly getting into in the swing of things.
Oh, amazing. I mean, obviously we're going to be talking about Paris. Can't wait to hear all about it. But I'd love to go back to sort of like your early years, because I know I'm definitely hearing sort of like an English accent, but I'd love to hear more about, your early years growing up, were you sporty? Were you outdoorsy?
So if we go right back, so I was born in China. I was left in an orphanage door when I don't know, like roughly a couple of months old. And so, I grew up in an orphanage until I was probably, I think my adoptive mum met me when I was like 1 or 2 years old. And at that time, my adoptive parents came out on a missionary trip to China to help make the orphanage look good and help to do those DIY stuff there. So they didn't really have any ambitions to adopt me at that point, but it was only when there was a photo taken of me and another girl with my adoptive mum. So then they got this photo, and then when they came back to the UK, my mum just had a thought in her head, oh, doesn't this make you want to adopt them? Because my adoptive mum also had 4 kids of her own as well. So it was kind of, at that point they were kind of growing up, and I think they had time to adopt me as a disabled child. So that process kind of took a while, took like 2 or 3 years. And because, there's some legislation in China around adoption and stuff like that. So I came to the UK when I was 6 years old. And bearing in mind, I didn't know any English whatsoever. So, at that point, it was kind of me learning English, starting a new school, starting school in a different country. So I kind of learned English pretty quickly. I would say probably like 6 months for when I first arrived to the UK. And I kind of just started from there. I guess I can kind of elaborate more on my wheelchair basketball journey and whether I was a sporty person or not, is that I probably wasn't a sporty person. In secondary school, PE lessons weren't that good for me because they weren't inclusive and they didn't have like sports like wheelchair basketball, like track and field, like those adaptive sports. So I kind of felt frustrated and left out of like PE lessons. And my dad kind of, like I was talking to him about this and it's like, oh, we need to do something different to help you feel more included and stuff like that. So he was talking to a friend whose kid was in an afternoon school club where they did wheelchair basketball. So then I kind of went to that and he invited me there. And I just fell in love with the sport. And now I guess I kind of class as a sporty person because it's what I do every day.
You're a Paralympian. You are definitely a sporty person.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of your time in sort of China, or is that just sort of too long ago now? Is it all just sort of not really in your memories anymore?
Yeah, I don't really remember much of it. Sometimes when like you think something's happened, but actually because it was so long ago and when I was a child, did I make that up or? So I don't really remember.
Do you speak Chinese now?
I don't. So I lost all of it now. My parents, when they realized that I was learning English quite quickly, but then I was kind of losing my Chinese. So they were like, oh, let's take you to a Chinese like school to like develop that again. But I think at that point it was too late. I kind of already knew too much English and lost like the Mandarin side of it. So yeah, I don't know any Chinese now.
How great for you to be able to have that conversation with your dad and just say, actually, sorry, first of all, I suppose this is going back like 20 years ago, 19 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. Like that actually, so basically a PE lesson is happening and you're just sat in the corner not doing anything. Is that literally how it was?
So they did try and include me. So like I remember, being on like the netball court and, trying to play netball, but they were all like able-bodied, so they were able to run. And I would always be quite scared of running over their toes, or there was that feeling like they were like limiting themselves because I was in a chair and stuff like that. So I would, if it was like netball, then I would be included. But if it's something like football or rugby, when it's on the field, and obviously pushing a chair on a field is very, very hard, I would often, go do some work in the office or catch up on homework and those kind of things.
Yeah. I suppose, and also like you might just be thinking, oh, they're just passing the ball to me out of pity, which is not
exactly.
Yeah, it's like not how you want to feel. But I love the fact that you could have this conversation with your dad and that he went out and actually was like, okay, we need to do something about this. And like, do you remember like sort of playing like wheelchair basketball for the first time and what that was like?
Yeah, I do actually. It's so like vivid. Like it's just like, because also so wheelchair basketball, we have a different chair for it as well. So I have a day chair and a wheelchair basketball chair, and they're a little bit different. So in a wheelchair basketball chair, it's kind of, you have all these straps to kind of like make you feel like you're part of it. So I remember getting into it. I mean, obviously I was still small at the time, and this club, they only have certain chairs, so it didn't fit me that well, because I was quite small in it. But I just felt like the ability to be able to push and to feel like one with the chair. And also like the social aspect of wheelchair basketball, I just fell in love with like finding a community in that as well.
Had you met like many other sort of disabled people at that point? Like, I suppose, because I imagine it being like amazing, like suddenly going to a room and it's like, hold on, there's like 20 people in wheelchairs and we're going to be playing basketball. Like, this is like a level playing field now.
Yeah. So at that point, no, I went to a normal school, I guess. So there was only me. There's only probably 2 people in chairs at my school at that time. So no, I hadn't really been exposed to other people in chairs and, other people with different disabilities. So it was really, really nice to experience that.
So you were talking about the chair. So you get like fully like strapped in or something. And so you become like one with the chair. And then do you just want to talk through like, what are the rules? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so wheelchair basketball and basketball are virtually the same game, really. It's just that wheelchair basketball, we're sat in chairs, and then we have a classification system as well in it. So we have 1.0 to 4.5s in our team. And so 1 is being the most impaired and 4.5 is being the most able on your team. So usually your 1s are like you're paralyzed, and 4.5s are usually like amputations and those type of disabilities. So when you play wheelchair basketball, your 5 players on court have to add up to 14 points. So it's also a coach's job to be able to figure that out and to see what the best available lineup. And my classification is the 2.5. So I'm somewhere in between that middle range. So the rules are the same, basically. We have the same height. The same balls, the same court size. It's just that, with the running game, I think there's a two-step rule and then it's a traveling, whereas ours is a 2-push before you have to pass, dribble, or shoot.
Oh, can you still roll with it? So if you so it's like push, and then you can roll and then pass?
Yeah. So like as you develop the skill sets, you so when we get taught wheelchair basketball, you go 1, 2, and then dribble. But then as you develop the skill sets, it kind of just becomes naturally. So you just dribble anyway. So
what age did you start playing then? Were you 6 or slightly older?
Oh no. So in secondary school, so I was probably 12 at the time, 12, 13.
Okay. So 12, 13, because what happened at the age of 15? Do you want to share what happened then?
To be honest, I had no ambition to play for GB. I didn't think it was actually possible to start off with. So, I kind of was playing and, the coach at my first club was like, oh, you should come to this, because he coached all around the Southeast. So he had several clubs at different levels. So he kept inviting me to all his clubs and stuff like that. So at that point, I think the GB coach at the time kind of saw some potential in me and invited me to a camp, I think it was the senior national team camp. So that year, I think when I went to my first camp, I didn't get selected, but I was kind of on their radar, for potential and stuff. So the year after, I then represented GB at a senior tournament when I was just 15 years old at a World Championships.
You, the youngest player chosen to represent Great Britain at the 2014 Women's World Wheelchair Basketball Championships in Toronto. I mean, wow, like that must have been amazing. Like how was it like heading over to Toronto? Did your parents come with you? Were you going over there by yourself? Like how did you feel like competing at this level?
So my parents didn't come out, but I was traveling with the team. So that was kind of nice. And, I didn't really think much of it, because at that point I was like, I'm just playing basketball. This is what I love to do. And this is why I do it. Like, and to get to experience like a different country to play basketball in as well, I guess it's pretty cool. And it's a pretty cool honor to also represent GB, because like I was one of the best 12 to get selected to go. And at that age, it's like looking back at it now, it's like, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, but it also just shows, like how talented that you were, and the fact that being picked at such a young age, and then getting this, this opportunity to go and travel, and then to be part of these championships over in Toronto, just amazing. When did you start thinking, oh, okay, hold on, like maybe I can take this further?
I just want to elaborate on because I got selected so young, the wheelchair basketball community is so small. So it just shows that like when I was 15, I was the best. And that's kind of like, I want it like in the future for more people to take part. So there is more competitiveness at the elite level and international level.
Yeah.
And for me to go, oh yeah, this is something I would do, is probably when it came to the Rio Paralympics. So in 2016, I knew that was coming up, and that was the goal, is to always, to represent GB at a Paralympic level. So yeah, that's probably when.
Yeah. Oh my God. Amazing. And you still studying at this point. What were the dreams? What were the ambitions? What were you wanting to do sort of like career wise?
At that point, I didn't really know. So around 2015, 2016, I had actually moved away from home. So I lived in Southampton. There was a centralized program with the GB team up in Worcester. So at that point, I was it 16 to 18? And I was young, so I was still not considered an adult at the time. So my dad actually had moved up with me to Worcester to take part in a centralized program. And what that means is that the team was just training 5 days a week. We have small groups, we have gym, but it kind of just enables us to become closer as a team, because we're training every day together, and to kind of build that relationship. So at that point, I had made a big decision to do college, as well as moving to Worcester. So I did college and trained with the team. So that period of my life was very, very hectic to kind of, I guess, adjust to the demands of both basketball and school as well. Yeah.
Are you being paid by Team GB? Do you get like a salary?
Yeah. So we are sponsored by the National Lottery, which we are very, very fortunate to be able to do that. And so we, as athletes, depending on our performances at each international tournaments, will get a certain amount of money each month to, go be able to train every day.
2015, run up to Rio. When did you know that you were going to be part of the team, or just because, or did you always know the fact that you were already doing this, that you would be part of the team?
When did I know? Probably only at that selection meeting. So we would train from September to whenever the Paralympics were. And we usually, in September, we'd usually have like a full squad. So I think we maybe had like 12 to 16 players, up for selection. And we would just train every day together. And then we would then, when it came to, actually before that, we would go to tournaments and stuff like that to, have stats on us. And basically we were evaluated on those stats and how we gelled as a team and stuff like that. So then I think when it came to May, maybe, it's when they had a selection camp. So, we would get tested on how quick we were in the chair, like our dribbling abilities, our game knowledge and those kind of things. And then at the end of that camp, we then got told, and obviously I was, rightly so, I was very nervous for that, even though I knew like at that point, like I was fine, but because there was, for me in my classification, there was only this one other girl. We were probably both going to get selected at the same time. So yeah.
What's it like team dynamics wise? Like what sort of role do you play in the team, and what sort of, like, do you have like a specific position?
So obviously it's developed over the years on what my role is. I would say now I probably more of a ball handler, guard, that kind of role. Like I've had the honor to be able to do that within the team, but that's obviously because I've had time and experience playing other roles, like more like defensive roles, more like just setting screens for people. But now as I've developed my game and stuff like that, I've got the honor to do more, I guess, more important roles within the team. But every role in wheelchair basketball is important.
Tell us about Rio. Like, what was that whole sort of journey and process like even getting out there, and I suppose like accessibility, like was it easy to move around? Like were you a part of, like, were you in like in the village, you know, what did that sort of, like, the behind the scenes, you know, what was it like?
It was pretty cool because, you know, I had like heard from some of my teammates who had already represented GB at a Paralympic level. So they were telling the younger ones like what the village was going to be like, what like the crowd, like that whole experience was going to be like. So it kind of made me feel very excited to go out in Rio. And to be honest, I don't remember Rio that much because I was also so young and I felt like everything kind of happened at once. I just remember my parents came out actually to that, and that was cool to experience that. But just to be able to be part of like a multi-sport event is really cool.
So you've done Rio, but you're quite young. Tokyo, obviously there was COVID and everything else going on at that point before it really sort of happened. Like, how did that impact you?
Oh, it impacted massively. So when it was in February 2020, when we heard about like this, like COVID and stuff like that, but we were actually, you know, at a tournament in Japan. So we were kind of like, oh, this is a bit weird. But we did compete at that tournament, and then we came back and then trained a few weeks in the UK, and then training just stopped. We were told to just go home. So at that point, we moved centralization during that period. So we weren't in Worcester, we were in Sheffield. So at that point in Sheffield, I was like, well, I'm going to go home back to my parents because I was living with someone who, one of my GB teammates, she was going to go back home too. So I was like, well, there's no point me staying there by myself. So I just went home. And at that point, we didn't know what was going to happen because, you know, they didn't announce it till it was pretty late, to postpone the Paralympics. So, you know, I was still kind of trying to train at home. It was very weird training at home and stuff like that. And I think it was then in September when, you know, we knew it was going to be postponed to the next year. So then we had set up like, you know, these COVID bubbles. And so I then moved back up to Sheffield, and that impacted our training massively. You know, we had to do weekly tests, like COVID tests. We had to train by ourselves, really. Like on a court, we would just get a section of the court and that's our section. We'd train in masks and that, yeah. And then we would not really get to do like 5v5 stuff. So we wouldn't actually get to play a proper game. We'd do a lot of individual skills because that's what the rules permitted at that time. And I think that kind of impacted our results in Tokyo. We came 7th. You know, we could tell that some of the other teams were able to train together and to actually do 5v5, whereas we were kind of very limited in what we were allowed to do.
What was Tokyo like though? What was it, like a weird atmosphere? Like, did you have people like watching the games or anything?
No, there was nobody in the crowd.
Wow.
It was, you can just hear like our own voices at the arena. And it was so weird because normally you know, you feed off the crowd and stuff like that. But yeah, that was tough.
How do you deal with like sort of setbacks or when things, you know, don't go according to plan? Like, have you been taught like strategies through Team GB? Are you getting, I suppose, like mental support from like a sports psychologist or anything?
I would say now probably is the most psych support that we've ever had. I would say I've been part of the team for the last 10 years. So I'd say probably 8 out of those years, they didn't really invest in a team psych or psychology sport. But I think now, because like athlete mental well-being is so, I guess, prominent now, because, you know, of athletes like Simone Biles, you know, talking about these issues, they actually invested into our, mental well-being.
How did you find that? Like, was that like individual? Was that like team sessions? Like, did they pinpoint anything for you, which was like, actually, this is something that you need to work on, or these are some of the areas that we can really develop if you learn these sort of skills?
Those skills I think I've always had because of my life experience and what I've had to deal with. So I've had to be quite resilient anyway. But I think most recently, because I'm balancing a lot with a PhD and playing basketball, both for the women's wheelchair basketball team at Alabama, but also like internationally, like that's been a lot for me the last few years. So I have sought outside support from that, from our own environment. I think that's much better for me to just be able to just manage those things, and, you know, how I can be, I guess, more effective in the way, you know, I give feedback, and how I can, because for me, I'm quite introverted and mostly I would just let other people say things. But now I've realized I actually need to say some things for things to change, because otherwise it's never going to change. And it's always going to be that struggle that I'm never going to be happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've learned, like, you know, how to, I guess, give feedback, and to actually know my like voice is valued, and, you know, those type of things.
Yeah, especially, you know, like if you've been on the team for 10 years, you've got all of this experience and knowledge, and that's so, so valuable for other people. Like 1,000% your voice is like definitely valid. You know, you talked about like you're doing like your PhD at the moment, you're over in Alabama. How did that come about?
So it was actually during the COVID year. I had finished my undergrad at Sheffield, and I was like, oh, I'll just take a gap here, because, you know, we were then training for Tokyo. So at that point, I was looking at different master's program in the UK, because I wanted to further my education, because for me as a person, I want to do two things. I just don't want to just be playing basketball, because, you know, I think for my own mental health and well-being, I'm much suited to have like two different things to think about. So I'm not stressed. If I'm stressed in one, the other one balances itself out. If I'm stressed in the other, then basketball balances it out. So I needed to do something else. So I was looking at, I guess, master's program in the UK. And actually at that time, I think it was around October, November of 2020, the assistant coach at the time of the Alabama women's wheelchair basketball team reached out to me and was like, would you be interested in studying here at Alabama? I've heard some good things so at that time, several of my teammates, my GV teammates, had played in Alabama like 2-3 years ago. So they'd obviously talked to each other, to the assistant coach and the player, about me, and go, what were the possibilities of me coming out here? So she reached out to see what the possibility were. And, you know, I kind of was like, you know, I never really, like, I knew Alabama and I knew the women's wheelchair basketball team, but I never actually considered like me like coming here. So, you know, after talking to the coach and my parents, and they thought it was such a good idea. And I was like, really? This is like pushing me out of my comfort zone. Like, I'm having to move to a different country, to a different university system, and those kind of things. So I was a bit hesitant, actually, because it was so new. But they were all like, yeah, it would be good for you, like good for your basketball, good for your like personal development and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, let's go. So literally after Tokyo, when the games ended, I think I had a week at home before then I came here, which was crazy.
Do all the universities have wheelchair basketball teams? And is there like a league that you play in and compete in?
Yeah, so there's the collegiate division in the US. So there is 6 women's teams at different universities, and something like 12 men's teams spread across the US.
So is Alabama like quite like one of the best places to go for wheelchair basketball?
Yes, for sure. You know, they have the good thing about here is they have a lot of donors who donate to the program. And, you know, we have our own facilities here. We have our own basketball court, our own gym, our own locker room. And that's something I don't think that any other program has in the US. So they really value adaptive sports here.
What was that like, sort of moving over there and being part of like an American team? Were there other like international players there? Like, have you found like a good friendship group? Like, yeah, talk us through that.
Yeah. So when I first came here, you know, I was like, I guess what I'd always say to people are like, yeah, we speak the same language, but the meanings are different sometimes, we have different phrases and just sometimes, like the team would look at me like, what are you saying? It's like, a coach, but they call it a bus. So, it's those kind of like small things, like the language is a little bit different. Thankfully, on this team, we have a few international players too. So we have one from France. Well, we have two from France and one from Israel. And I'm actually currently living with a girl from Israel and a girl from France. And, we call ourselves like the foreign ballers as a little joke, because sometimes it's kind of nice to have that, I guess, that common feeling, because, we're from Europe and European Americans are slightly different in the way we operate. Just personalities and just the way we go about things. And it's kind of nice to have that, I can go, oh, the Americans did this today. Like we kind of just joke about it. And then they probably joke about us too, like in the way we like our mannerisms and stuff like that.
Amazing. And so how long is this like how long is your PhD program for over there?
So it's a 3-year PhD program and I'm in my second year.
And what's your topic and how's it going? I know I should never ask people doing a PhD this question, but like.
So in the US, it works differently than a UK PhD. So a UK PhD, you kind of go with a title. You already know what you're doing. Whereas the US one, it's very broad and very vague at the moment. So I have to take 2 years of classes. So like stats classes, like health education promotion core classes, and other things that are in my interest. And then in the 3rd year, so it will be my next year, is when I decide my dissertation title. I have yet to decide on that. I have a vague idea, but I'm not really sure. Yeah.
So how does it work studying in Alabama and still being part of the GB team, especially in the run up to Paris? How do you figure that out?
It's a lot of time management. So I guess last year it was this year, because most of the things happened in February, March, April. So, it's very tricky.
Were you having to fly back for training or stuff, or you just not train together? Yeah.
So we're a summer-based program now, the GB team. So we're not a centralized program, but there were still tournaments happening throughout the year. So in February, I went to Japan to be with the team. And then in April, I then went to, I think it was Holland and Germany. So I had to keep coming back and forth to like Europe and then to Japan. And that was very interesting, traveling by myself as a disabled person. Yeah.
But also you'd have to take the wheelchair you're using, but also you'd have to take your other wheelchair with you as well for the games. Would you?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How was that traveling? So, my God, it sounds a nightmare. I feel as though I'm getting stressed, but how was that?
Difficult. I've had, every time I've flown, I've always had something like, whether it's like a delayed flight or because I've missed the other flight because, assistants couldn't come and help me get off the plane in time to get on another plane. So, those challenges. And I've had my basketball chair broken last September. When I flew back from England to the US, my chair did break. But thankfully, I wasn't training at that point, so we could get a chair sorted out in time. But, there's these different scenarios that, that's challenging. And most of the time it's assistance and, because obviously I do need help because I can't get my own luggage off the conveyor belt and those type of things. But most of the time they're good, but sometimes they do go wrong and they go wrong.
Because this is your third Paralympic Games. I mean, it sounds even weird for me to say, but are you just more relaxed about it now because you sort of know, or you've got expectations? Does that make sense? Or is it still you're still buzzing and yeah?
Yeah, no, I think I'm now at that point where I know what I'm doing. I know my role. Most of the time I know what to expect when it comes to those big games. So yeah, this time around, it kind of felt different. I knew who we were competing against, the players and yeah.
What's sort of the age that people start retiring from wheelchair basketball? Is there an age or could you keep playing, fit and healthy, obviously for the next sort of 10 years or so?
So that in wheelchair basketball, there really isn't an age. It's only your ability. So if somebody better at your classification comes along and takes your spot, then that's really it then. But like, I know like some wheelchair basketball, like on the women's side, especially, you know, we have 40-year-olds playing at the international level. This is for another team, but you know, you can play as long as I feel like I can play as long as I want to keep playing, because there isn't anybody coming up, you know, to take that spot or to challenge it at the moment.
Oh, so you could have another three more Paralympics in you, couldn't you? Maybe 4.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you like that to happen? Would that be like quite sweet?
It would, but I think there's a lot of things, you know, like team dynamics, coaching, and those type of things, you know, that I have to think about. And I kind of have to think about what I want to do in the future, you know, as my career goal. You know, I'm doing a PhD for a reason, and I want to make an impact in that area too. And will wheelchair basketball help me or like not help me? So it's kind of, you know, weighing out those options as to what I really want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose also like studying in America, like you could have the opportunity afterwards to work in the States. And then again, that makes it like a little bit more complicated or more challenging on the time management side of things. Like, have you thought about LA LA's next, isn't it? 2028? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have, but I think at this moment in time, I need to kind of evaluate my own performance and the team's performance and see kind of where I want to go with it, if that makes sense. Like what I want to get out from LA really. And, you know, so it's kind of undecided, but just kind of, you know, thinking through things, talking to other people and just, going with the flow, to be honest.
How did you get on in Paris, and how do you sort of almost like, I suppose, rate your performance? Were you happy with how things went?
So as a team, we came 5th, which actually, if you look at our, like the women's wheelchair basketball history, is the second best we've ever done. But I had hoped to have, you know, at least been in one of the medal games or to compete for a medal. So I did feel like we fell short on that target. And I guess my own performance, I would say I think I did well given the circumstances. You know, we had some injury within our team, so we couldn't play the usual lineup and we only had to play certain people. So it's kind of, you know, just kind of seeing, I guess also for me, my role did change from this year compared to last year. So I think I did well given the role that I was given.
How do you deal with sort of, I suppose, that disappointment? Like, is there any tips or tricks that you're using to sort of manage it, or is it just, it is what it is?
So when we were in Paris, we were so focused on that result, and that is so difficult. You know, I was upset. Some of my teammates were upset that we didn't achieve that goal. So I think it's just feeling what you're feeling at the time and just being okay with that and just allowing yourself to feel like that. Because, you know, sometimes in sport, you're always like, oh, you need to be positive. But sometimes it's okay to feel that way. So I kind of allowed myself to feel like that and allowed myself to feel disappointed. But now I'm looking. So after Paris, the last few weeks, I've been looking at game footage and go, actually, objectively, what did we do well? What did I do well? What could I have improved? So it's just like the objective without the emotion behind it. And then we'll kind of have like a team debrief and stuff like that. So it's kind of, it's a step-by-step process and dealing with the emotions and like how I'm feeling and stuff like that.
Are you having much of like a come down after Paris, or have you sort of adjusted pretty well now? Like, is it, so like after big adventures and challenges, sometimes you can get like the adventure blues, or it's sort of like, you know, this event that, you know, every 4 years when you're training, you know, so hard and, you know, competing around the world, but this is the championship. This is the one where it really counts. Like, how are you coping with that now?
You know, I think I'm just so glad that I have something else outside of basketball. So like doing the PhD, like studying. So I'd spent like 4 days at home in the UK before then coming back here to study. And at the moment, I have not touched my basketball chair yet. I'm planning to start on Monday, but it's just nice to not think about basketball because it had consumed most of my summers. It's nice to not have to think about that. You know, there was a period where I was very kind of sad and disappointed, you know, mainly at the result. But, you know, my teammates here have gotten me through it. My parents have gotten me through it. And even some of my GB teammates, you know, we've talked it out and, you know, how we're feeling and just being really honest about that. And I think that's helped.
And Joy, where can people find more information about you? How can they follow along with your basketball career?
Probably the best is probably on my Instagram. I'm not a big social media person, but I do like to try and like consistently post. Consistently, I mean by like every couple of months. So yeah, my Instagram is Hazy.
Awesome. Haizsee. Amazing. Joy, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. It's been amazing to speak to you. And I would love for you to have final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to take up a new sport. They want to get active, get more involved, get outside their comfort zone, whether it's, moving to another country to take on a PhD. What words of advice would you like to share? But please don't say just do it. Anything else apart from that?
I think it's just to be open-minded, take the opportunities that are given to you. Like I had never considered coming to Alabama, but because I was open-minded and I, also like having courage to do that. Because I feel like as females, we're kind of, always thinking about the pros and cons. We always think about, those type of things. Whereas, just, well, I guess to go do it. I know you said, not to say that, but just kind of go, I'm going to take this leap. I'm going to take this leap that is going to help my own personal development. And it's going to hopefully make me to a better person.
Be open-minded, take the opportunities that become available, have the courage to just do it. But being open-minded, taking opportunities and having the courage to act is actually really, really powerful. But Joy, thank you so much for sharing more about your journey and just best of luck with your future in your PhD and in wheelchair basketball. It's been absolutely amazing speaking to you.
Thank you.
Hey Tribe, I really hope you enjoyed the episode with Joy. I loved hearing about her experiences in Paris and the fact that she's pursuing her PhD as well over in America. Absolutely incredible. Everything that we have talked about today is available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. Big shout out to all my wheelchair users who are listening. I've got more incredible episodes of women going out there and doing adventures. If you visit the resources section on the Tough Girl website, there is one dedicated to wheelchair adventurers. So some of these women I've spoken to include Trisha Downing. She's a wheelchair athlete, mental toughness speaker, author, helping you to get your grit on. We've spoken to Mel Nichols. She's also a Paralympian. She's an endurance and adventure athlete, hand cycled Le Jog from Land's End to John O'Groats in the UK, and she's a world record holder. Karen Dark has been on the Tough Girl podcast. We've spoken with Debbie North, who is making the inaccessible accessible. She's passionate about creating a countryside for all. Quinn Brett, first person to hand cycle the Great Divide mountain bike route from the Canadian border to the Mexican border. We've spoken to Parvinder Chawla, who is traveling the world solo in her wheelchair, who is challenging perceptions around disability. We've also spoken to Stephanie Quintrell. We've spoken to Stephanie twice actually, but she shares more about her journey of courage and adventure, riding beyond limits, being the world's first wheelchair dependent person to ride horseback 130 kilometers across the Pyrenees from France to Spain. We also speak with Paula Craig, MBE, who shares more about how she's turned challenges into triumphs in both sport and life, as she talks more about her resilience and encouraging others to fearlessly pursue their dreams. So many incredible stories of women out there living their life, following their passions. And I hope it inspires you to think about what your next challenge is, what your next goal is. We're coming to the end of November, beginning of December. Hopefully you have been enjoying the vlogs coming out on the Tough Girl YouTube channel, all about my hike in New Zealand. New episodes are going live every Friday, Sunday and Wednesday at 7 a.m. UK time. If you haven't subscribed, please do go and subscribe to the Tough Girl YouTube channel. Big shout out to all the incredible patrons who are making the Tough Girl podcast possible. If you would like to pay it forward, then please visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and you can donate whether it's a monthly amount or a yearly amount to support the work, support the mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media. So next year it will be the 10th year anniversary of the Tough Girl Podcast in 4th of August 2025. Still trying to figure out what to do and how to celebrate. If you do have any ideas, then please do send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com. I'd love to hear from you. What are your adventures? What are your challenges? What are you training for? Please do keep me updated. I am active on Instagram at Tough Girl Challenges and love connecting with other women who are just passionate about the outdoors, challenge, adventure. That is what I am about. All that's left for me to say is wherever you are, whatever you are doing. Give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon.